As the current administration is so fond of pointing out, we now live in a post-9/11 world. We've already shown that in this news hour and what that means in political terms. Now in our third story in the countdown, what it means in practical terms. In a nutshell, it signifies that, to quote the Homeland Security Department, if you see something, say something. Even at Scooter Libby's scheduled hearing in the CIA leak investigation this morning, thanks to a strange suitcase found on a construction site at the U.S. District Courthouse. Within minutes, the court was evacuated. Police cordoned off the area. Sniffer dogs started to inspect the perimeter. The fire department arrived and traffic was shut down. Eventually, an officer dressed in full bomb protection gear carried out the offending suitcase. Turns out it was not a bomb. It was just a bag of soiled clothes. But the key part of the equation, of course, is that you don't know that beforehand. Speaking of emergency units and government responses and guys in big safety suits, the Rupert Murdoch-owned newspaper, the New York Post, may have just impeded an FBI investigation into terroristic threats. I know this because I was a recipient. The Bureau asked us not to report any of the details so that the person or persons responsible would not know any of the threats had been received by any of the targets, and we, of course, complied. I still cannot confirm many of the specifics, again, in order to make the jobs of the FBI and the New York Police Department a little easier. But I find it necessary to respond to the genuinely shocking tone with which Murdoch's paper reported the event and the string of factual errors they made, either through negligence or a premeditated disregard for the truth. Powder Puff Spooks Keith, reads the headline. The article then gives the exact details of the event, which we were asked not to divulge. The caustic commentator panicked and frantically called 911. There was no panic, and if that needs to be independently verified, I'm happy to authorize release of that 911 call recording. In fact, from my own sense of the thing, I was confident there was no danger. My first inclination was to wait until the start of the next workday to notify the authorities. But the remote possibility that any delay might have endangered others led me to reverse my decision. An NYPD hazmat unit rushed to, then the paper helpfully reveals the location of the event, but preliminary tests indicated the substance was harmless soap powder. However, that wasn't enough to satisfy Olbermann, who insisted on a checkup. The results of part of the preliminary tests referred to did not come back for nearly 6 hours. The other results did not come back for about 14. I made no insistence on any checkup. The officer in charge of the 18 or so police officers who responded asked that I follow their protocol. A decontamination shower at the scene, the bagging and sealing of the clothes that I was wearing at the time of the incident, and my transportation to an emergency room. I mean, not to overdo this, but they had to melt my keys and destroy my wallet. He asked to be taken to, and forgive me again for not mentioning the specific hospital, where doctors looked him over and sent him home. In fact, I was there 10 hours before they permitted me to leave, even after several forceful requests by me and my employers to the New York Department of Health that I should be released. Incidentally, I apologize if those were too forceful. Apologize for the requests, not the commentaries that obviously inspired the event I'm talking about, and the Post's mocking of police and FBI efforts, and its endorsement of terroristic threats from the radical right. We will not be intimidated here. Whether they gave him a lollipop on the way out isn't known. Olbermann had no comment. What they gave me on the way out was not a lollipop, but a prescription for Cipro, the antibiotic used in the event of exposure to anthrax. And one of the reasons I offered no comment is obvious. The authorities asked me not to. Also, a New York Post reporter attempted to gain access to me by falsely identifying herself as a friend of mine. And most relevantly, the Post never called NBC News or MSNBC seeking any comment. They would have been told that the FBI had requested we try to keep this quiet. But of course, even if the story been totally accurate in the paper, printing it at all would have been no less outrageous nor incendiary. It's almost melodramatic to ask why the New York Post would choose the side of domestic terrorism rather than choose the side of the FBI. But it's remarkable that this was actually printed by any newspaper, even in the current political climate, even in the wake of my editorial stance here, even with Rupert Murdoch's radical agenda, which has stirred up such rage in his readers and viewers. A month ago, when reporter Steve Centani of Murdoch's Fox News was kidnapped in Gaza, along with his cameraman, that network reached out to the others, this one included. They relayed that the authorities there had urged everyone to keep reporting of the kidnapping low-key and to a minimum, because it was believed the kidnappers did not know they had gotten hold of someone recognizable. We and most other major news organizations immediately and thoroughly cooperated with Murdoch's request. Now, in a return case, Murdoch's newspaper did not even make the single phone call that could have told it the potential damage it would be doing. So next time a Fox or a New York Post employee is in distress or the government is investigating something endangering them and Murdoch's people ask us to hold a story, of course we will. On this end, anyway, we are still human beings and Americans, and we would never have any problem choosing whether to support the terrorist or the FBI.